Press start. Press start.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second session of Azure DIY. Today, we have got Anthony Barton, who is going to talk about DevOps and also how you can use Microsoft as a platform for DevOps. There have been some confusion lately where I have heard a lot of questions around, oh, Microsoft has got GitHub. Microsoft has also got Azure DevOps. How does it line together? What the roadmap leads, like what exactly, where does the developer go? Which platform should we be using? So Anthony is going to answer to all your questions today and also doing wonderful demo. Hello, Anthony. And also we have got a huge panel of other Microsoft people. We have got Rebecca, Amanda, and Philip, who will be answering to your question and answers. Two quick things. First is like this recording, this whole event is going to be recorded for our internal use. And the next thing is like, please feel free to ask questions at any time. Once you are in the attendee list, you can see you can shoot your questions. We'll be continuously answering your questions during our session. Over to you, Anthony.
Excellent. Thanks, Sri. And I'll also add that I'll probably pause maybe halfway through the session and then towards the end, and I'll ask the panel to call out some of those questions to me as well. So we'll certainly get into as many of those questions as we can in the time we've got. So again, welcome along. So I'll add my welcome to Shree's. My name's, okay, come on, it's not good when PowerPoint doesn't work, right? There we go. So my name's Anthony Barton. I'm a DevOps architect on Microsoft's DevOps CAT team. And what my little small team's goal is we work with Microsoft's largest customers to help them accelerate their DevOps transformation. So what I do, well, up until recently, was to do a lot of flying and traveling, and I spend 2 weeks with our largest customers, grabbing one of their teams and helping that team transform with DevOps best practices. Or actually, I'm not going to call them best practices, with DevOps practices, with that kind of mindset. So kind of that's what I do. So I'm a very casual presenter. This session will be no different to that either. So the impact of COVID has been unprecedented. Certainly, I haven't lived through anything like this. I suspect many of us are in the same boat. And it's changed dramatically how many of our staff work. There's a lot to be, incredibly thankful for. Working in IT with a wonderful employer has made things a lot easier for me and my family. But of course, there's a lot of other people out there that are nowhere near in such a lucky situation. So just being mindful that everyone's in a different situation. I want to be thankful for the opportunities I have, and mindful that a lot of people struggle and haven't been as lucky during this. So earlier this month, the Harvard Business Review published an article on how to keep your team motivated remotely. The link's down the bottom there. I encourage anyone to go and have a look. It's not a big read, which is always good. I noticed that I struggle with attention span more now that things are completely remote. I don't know whether anyone can relate to that, but certainly my attention tends to waver more easily, and I do struggle just to keep focus, which is crazy because we can't go out and do too many things. There's so many things we can't do. You think it'd be easier to focus with less distraction. That's not what I've found. So what we found, they talk about two things. They start by saying leadership organizations need to enable our teams to work remotely. And this is primarily about the technical challenge. That's about people now suddenly having to work from home that maybe have never done that before. At Microsoft and GitHub, we're very strong work from home cultures, probably more so GitHub. So I've always had a home office, and before joining Microsoft, I was self-employed. So it hasn't been quite the shift for me, but for many, it's been a massive change. Organizations have, in many cases, encouraged staff to either go and purchase some equipment and maybe reimburse them. They've said take some, monitors and laptops and stuff from the office if that's the case. But I'm lucky. My son's old enough; he's moved out. But how challenging for a lot of people that have certainly young kids and family at home. That must be, overly tough for them too. So as a technical challenge, we've had to scale and set up VPNs. We've set up infrastructure. We've done a lot of things to help in the technology of allowing teams to work from home. And from that respect, I think we've done generally pretty well. But what they found was the second side of things is to how do we motivate our teams to work effectively from home? And this is different. This is primarily a people challenge. And with fear, uncertainty, and the unknown around the pandemic, that's just made anything to do with people and culture so much more challenging. And that's the hard part. That's where I believe, and certainly the authors talk about the need to focus and spend more time. Sorry, that's a very, very busy graphic, but out of respect to the source there, I didn't want to trim it or cut it down. I found it was quite interesting because what it talks about is, oh, and I haven't got my little sneaky thing installed. Let's try that. Try that again. All right. So what it talks about here, and this surprised me a little bit. On the left, this is where employees have no choice where to work, remotely or in an office. Where you do have a choice, remotely or in an office, they found that those people that work remotely generally are less motivated. Okay, a generalization. But it surprised me, particularly where people chose to work from home. I would have kind of thought that would have lent more towards being more motivated in that space. So I was surprised. There's a bit of detail on the bottom of the slide there that talks about, the specifics of it. They found that they had 3 key negative motivators. Basically, emotional pressure, economic pressures. These are skyrocketing. Okay, that's the time we're in. Inertia, keeping that up. Is there any point even trying? So there are some significant negative motivators out there. They also talked about 3 positive motivators. A lack of opportunity around play. Oftentimes people relish the opportunity to grab a colleague and to go and solve problems and to fix things and make things better for customers. The reward of seeing a problem solved, a customer or colleague now enabled or unblocked. There's a lot of positivity around this play. Around purpose, teams and staff that have a clear purpose, hang on, let me silence that. Purpose. So purpose is sometimes is difficult. So there's a decreased opportunity for the visibility of the work that we do. It's nice to get recognition for your efforts. That's called being human. So remotely, that decreases. But when people are given clear purpose and direction, that's a very positive motivator. And the last one there is potential. And this is around how do we deal with the opportunity to improve. Oftentimes in the workplace, you can go and seek out, sit next to a colleague with more experience in a certain area and ask questions and learn and improve. Now that we're primarily working from home, that opportunity has changed. But what they talk about is it's actually, this could be a great positive motivator. Maybe we schedule some of these things in. The people are still there. They're just not necessarily sitting next to you. So if we can figure out how to make that side work, then this can be a great positive motivator. So well worth a read. One of their key findings, though, and I'll show you a comparative chart in a moment, and they state, if you want your teams to be engaged in their work, you have to make their work engaging. The most powerful way to do this is to give people the opportunity to experiment and solve problems that really matter. And that was amazing in what that did. If you look at the results in the chart on the right, for people that choose to work from home and are given permission, encouragement to experiment and solve meaningful problems, then that is an enormous step up in terms of motivation. So let them experiment, let them make meaningful changes. And with that experimentation, remember, an experiment may succeed. It may fail, but that's a learning either way. So in terms of letting them experiment, let them fail too. Failure is a critical ingredient in success. It's how we learn and get better. So I thought that was a very interesting article, and allowing teams and individuals to experiment. That's one of the key tenets of a DevOps culture and mindset, a growth mindset. Come up with an experiment. Decide, what success looks like, what failure might look like. Conduct the experiment and learn from whatever those results were, and then improve. The other thing, to recap, was let your staff do meaningful work. Okay. For some development teams that I've spoken to over the last couple of months, they've seen a decrease in demand from other internal teams, a refocusing around business continuity. Some of those development teams are kind of just bubbling along. That, in my mind, is a great opportunity that we can use. Other teams have had to pivot quickly and now rapidly enable the changes that we're seeing happening out there. Rapidly change from this type of business to a business that now is all online with deliveries, for example. Those development teams are flat out. So you've got the full spectrum there. If you're super busy, you're just trying to keep your head above water. But if you're not, I think there's some great opportunities to utilize this time to put our team, our company in a better position for when we come out of the back of this. This is a quote you may have seen from our CEO. Let me read it to you verbatim. I don't want to misquote him. There cannot be a more important thing for an engineer, for a product team, than to work on the systems that drive our productivity. So I would, any day of the week, trade off features for our own productivity. I want our best engineers to work on our engineering systems so that we can later come back and build all of the new concepts we want. Get our best and brightest, purpose them on looking at our engineering system. This is all about One ES, the one engineering system at Microsoft. We want those people to help build the world's best engineering system, investing in that so that we can then come back and deliver higher quality, more frequent value to our customers in the areas of Windows and Azure and SQL and all of the whole, all of the products that Microsoft focuses on. I wonder how many of your organizations invest equally in their own engineering support. And I'm sure that there's going to be some great examples amongst the audience, and probably some that think, wow, I wish we could do that as well. So two things I'm going to suggest in the time that we've got available. Security. As I go and deliver fast tracks around the world to our largest customers, security comes up all the time. And it's always from the perspective of we need to improve our security. Could this disruption to regular business be an opportunity to learn, review, improve and drive our security up? A chance to, reset and deep dive into that. So I'll talk about some things around security. It's also maybe a good time to have a close look at our tool chain. I was tempted to look at all of our processes, our whole DevOps things, our people and our culture, and I thought, okay, we haven't got enough time for all of that. But also look at your processes. Look for low value processes that introduce friction into what our teams are trying to do and solve for those things. Okay, back on the program. I want to talk about our tool chain, and there I want to talk about the opportunity today of integrating great tools like Azure DevOps with GitHub, and how that integration looks today and where that might be 6, 12, 18 months from now. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this session. I've been asked to do another session probably in a couple of months. So if you think of something you'd like to hear related to these topics, or anything, I guess, around Azure DevOps, GitHub, etc., make sure you include those as a question. Maybe not a question, but in the Q&A area in front of you, I'd love to see this. So if we can capture that, we can influence what that next session will be focused on for you. All right, DevSecOps, how modern practices can help. So that's a little photo. It was taken from, it was around a used car yard in Redmond. So most of my photos have come from somewhere I've been. Not an interesting one, but I thought, razor wire, I don't see that every day. So DevSecOps in a traditional enterprise. I'll often see our development teams working almost in isolation, our operations teams working almost in isolation. We're saying, hey, we need this infrastructure, and ops might go and look at that infrastructure for us. They'll use their tools. They may look at infrastructure as code, maybe, I don't know. But there's a lot of time and energy invested in that area. When the product's ready, we will push out to a development environment, and we'll be doing that frequently, regularly. We'll push out to the test environment. Hopefully QA will look at it, a lot more testing takes place. We move out to staging or pre-production. And then we go and start thinking about security. I've seen this in a lot of small and large organizations. For a lot of those organizations, security is like a pen test they'll do on the website before it goes live. And almost that's it. Absolutely an important thing. But if you're not looking to identify and mitigate until that late stage, before you go to production, the cost of any remedy there is going to be significant, assuming you find all of the challenges and issues. And if all you're doing is a pen test from the outside, you're going to miss a lot of things. I do see this quite a lot. It has been improving in my experience over the years. So hopefully many of you are beyond this mindset for security, but it's got a lot of challenges. Our application developers might work with their version control. Ops may or may not use version control, and if they do, it's often their own little silo. The security folk, again, may or may not, but it's in their own little fiefdom over there. And what you see there is we've got no visibility into those other areas. There's no reuse of the learnings in those across those areas, and we've got the dreaded silo situation. And where you've got those silos, you've got those big troughs of disillusionment living between them, which is a horrible place to be. It's not agile, it's not DevOps, and it's certainly not secure. So what do we look at? What can we do? Maybe successful DevSecOps is a situation where everyone involved in development operations and security work together collaboratively in the same place. We look at a big shift left on security in the same way that over the last 5, possibly 10 years, we've looked at a shift left on testing to make testing occur much earlier in the process. We need security to move across as well. as they all collaborate in that area. And you'll notice here I'm showing both GitHub and Azure DevOps and Azure having a role here to play. We deploy out to dev, out to test, staging and production, but security has been addressed and looked at the very beginning, right from the first pull request that saw code move into the repo. We're looking for security challenges and issues there. It could be, firstly, just a normal manual code review, beneficial, but not great for security. Some amazing automated tools that can help us there, from some of the static security analysis tools there to some of the tools like LGTM and some of the code QL stuff from the GitHub side of the world. These are truly amazing things from a security perspective. That's a whole other wonderful talk and conversation around the massive impact these things have had in a positive way, but that's for another day. So we start with security now from the very beginning, and every process that we go through, security is considered. Okay, it's not sort of just trying to catch the ball at the very, very end and hope you get it. Okay, you get many slices, many chances to try and catch that issue. Basically, we want everything as code. Infrastructure as code is a big thing there. We want it all centralized in a single place. We want it to be a very repeatable pattern across our team so that the learnings of one team can be built upon and enhanced by other teams with security at every phase. A consistent process and everything tracked. We want to be able to experiment independently in those areas for improvement. And then from every learning, we want to improve. Okay, so big step forwards. Come on, click. So I'm going to talk about a couple of different things here. Maybe you've seen the Microsoft Security Code Analysis suite of tools. I'll go reasonably quickly through that. So this is something that is available through Premier Support, and it's a suite of tools that Microsoft make available. And if we look at some of those, CredScan's great for going and detecting credentials, secrets, certificates, reversible encryption, any of those things that appear in source code. We've got a risk detection tool, so it's our cloud-based fuzzing solution where perpetrators will attempt to go and put in your phone number, so they hold the A key down and fill the entire thing, hoping that there'll be an uncaptured error and you'll leak information they can use to find a vulnerability, simply speaking. So that's an offering there. BinSkim's our lightweight scanner, so it's looking for things like out-of-date compiler optimizations that might leave exposed some vulnerabilities in some of the chips and chipsets. You've got tools like TSLint or ESLint for readability. It's a static analysis tool. Our anti-malware, that's actually a wrapper for Windows Defender, which is our anti-malware tool. So if you're using Microsoft's public hosted agents to do your build and so on, these machines and images are automatically destroyed and a fresh one created for every single connection. If you're creating your own self-hosted agents, oftentimes those machines now hang around for a long time. So we could be pulling down vulnerabilities onto those machines. So using the anti-malware tool, we can simply do things like scan for rootkits and all sorts of things on those boxes in an automated way. And now Roslyn Analyzer, a great tool for C# and VB. So I'm going to choose to show just one of those as an idea, and then I'll give you some really good news of other tools as well. So it's very, very common for, and fortunately becoming less common, for developers to put usernames and passwords into code. And it could be as simple as we might open up Notepad, we might say test user 1 password, test user 2 other password. These are test accounts, so they don't matter, right? But because they're test user accounts, we don't subject them to the same degree of scrutiny that perhaps we should, they may well still be local administrators on boxes somewhere. So those things can get picked up and used and exploited to cause problems for the business. We can also go and put them into any of our source codes, our database connection strings and the like. So CredScan is a great little tool that can help us. In our build pipelines, typically in Azure DevOps, we can go and add a little task here called Run CredScan. I won't go into all those details. In fact, if we change virtually nothing that you see there, it's going to go and scan for any of those things. I'll then add another task in there, and that task is going to produce an HTML readable report. You'll see the report here. Okay, it's found secrets there. Sure enough, there's a secret. And as part of the build report, we can then see this view button. When you click that view hyperlink, it literally opens up the file containing the secret and highlights the secret for you. You could easily put these steps in a build pipeline that's triggered as part of the pull request. So when a developer attempts to commit code, they create the pull request, the build fires off as part of the pull request. And if we find any secrets there, we basically break the build and prevent that pull request being accepted. Okay. A much better way of doing it rather than potentially letting the secret get into the code base and a manual code review a day, a week, a month later might pick that up. So, gating it at the stage when the code first comes near the repo, I think is far more beneficial. We also publish those logs. So in terms of traceability and governance, what we can do is the tools basically can integrate with a wide variety of different security tools. We then collect the logs of all of those tools. We can create an artifact in the pipeline, and we can include that with the build outputs. So we build the code, here's the built output, we fetch all of the logs corresponding to that particular version of code, and we keep them together. So here's the code, here's, for auditors, the results of all of the security tools that ran as part of that. And then finally, the last thing we do, there's typically 4 tasks in what I've been talking about. The last thing we do is a post-analysis step that says, if we found anything bad, break the build. Don't let it go any further. So seeing that together, what I would do there is have my cred scans, my tools up here. I'd create the report, publish that. So the logs in the report, publish them as an artifact, break the build if any problems were found. And notice I've done my testing after that, but you don't have to. You can control where you put these tasks. By putting that at the end, what I'm saying is I'm not even going to bother doing my testing. If there's a security problem, don't bother testing. That will break the build. That's got to be rectified immediately. We're not going to go any further. Okay. Of all the things to see, that's one of the least interesting. Let me see if I have that in front of me. If I go and open up one of these pipelines here, do I have that? And edit that pipeline. It's not very interesting seeing the YAML depiction of what those steps look like. But what you see here, that's where CredScan exists. Okay, so I've just gone over here, typed in CredScan. Now remember, this isn't what? Credential. There it is. So remember, this isn't an out-of-the-box component. So there is a 14-day or 30-day, I think it's 14-day trial you can sign up for. I just drag that across into my pipeline where I want it to occur. For me, I've fetched the source, I've restored any dependencies. Now I'm scanning it, creating the report, publishing the logs, and then I'm going to go and break the build if there were any problems.
Hey, Anthony, just a quick question from the crowd. People have asked if you can just zoom in a little.
Of course. A really, really, What a newbie mistake for me to make.
Question. Cheers. Thanks.
Crowd, I am so sorry. Okay, it's hard to find good presenters. Right, thanks, Philip.
Let me know if you got one. Cheers, mate.
Yes, I will. Awesome. All right, so on the upside, you really didn't miss a lot. It was looking at the YAML there around those particular tasks and steps. Okay, probably one of the least interesting demos. So moving on. All right, so given the closed audience, I'm going to throw this one over to my assistant. So who can tell me where I took that photo? Obviously the audience. Where?
Is that Melbourne? Is that on the bridge near South Bank?
Nope. It wouldn't surprise me if it looks similar in Melbourne. Actually, it's all written in English. Which is it all in English? It is. So that's going to throw you a little bit.
Good call. Anyone from the crowd, publish it. Where was this photo taken?
So this was a trip to Paris. So this is on one of the bridges in Paris. And there's big signs up saying, don't do this. And then you sort of see where the weight of all of those padlocks caused the rails to just fall off into the water. It's horrible. Anyway, random trivia. So keeping your cloud resources. So we talked a little bit, just touched on a massive subject of code security. Okay. I'll pivot for a moment then and say, well, something else to consider is keeping your cloud resources secure. We're really, really lucky. So I'm given my own internal Azure subscription. I'm able to go and provision resources when and as I need them. And I'm accountable for the costs, absolutely. I've been given safety rails and, try not to spend $1 million. It's a bit sterner than that, of course, but I can create these things. But with that comes great power and responsibility. So while I can spin these up, if I create and provision a resource in a public cloud, I take on responsibility for ensuring that's secure as well. Okay, so what are some of the tools we can use? And there's plenty. I'm choosing to share with you this one. So this is the Secure DevOps Kit for Azure. It's been around for a little while and it's constantly being improved. It's not a turnkey solution. It's not a setup.exe, everything's magical. It's more a combination of resources, tools, education, templates and things. Because security isn't turnkey, okay? It's an investment that you've got to put time, energy and effort into. So, sorry, that URL there at the top. So Azure Security Kit.azurewebsites.net. Quick search for Azure Security Kit for Azure. Sorry, the Secure DevOps Kit for Azure should find that for you without too many problems at all. What it's all about is what can we do to help ensure that when we provision things to the cloud that they're secure for us. There's tools there, or part of it, around subscription security. So if you want to create a subscription for a team or team members, instead of just going in and using the GUI and clicking, there's a lot of things we can do to templatize that, to talk about some of the role-based access control, the alerting, the policies. So we can use PowerShell to go in there, use some of these things to provision secure subscriptions out of the box based on the specific needs of your organization. There are tools like Security Intellisense, which I think, everyone using Visual Studio should be involved in here. I'll show you what that looks like. And some of the security verification tests. We can also put some of those things into our pipelines. Okay, so anything you can put into an automated pipeline, you then have a lot more chance that that's actually going to happen. If it's a manual thing, if it's a piece of paper saying you must do this, okay, they're less than reliable. So if I'm going to deploy something, I can check the security at the start, make the changes that I want. And as part of that process, I can then run the security verification tests at the end to make sure that it was secure when I started. I've done my deployment of resources, whatever they might be, the website, the database, and so on, and then at the end run it again and make sure we haven't inadvertently opened, opened something that we shouldn't have for nefarious actors to exploit. There's also the continuous assurance runbooks. So periodically scan production and watch for drift. So we can go in there and create Azure runbooks that can go and run a lot of these different scripts and tools to constantly check. So when you make the changes, check. If someone goes in and makes changes themselves manually, well, we can catch those as well by automating processes with runbooks to say once a day, once a week, whatever your tolerance is, run these checks, notify people if there are challenges. Notify them with a lot of noise if they're high vulnerabilities and challenges, or if they're less, maybe it's just an email and a follow-up. All of those are focused around the use of JSON, okay? And that's how we define most of those things. We also want to have a single security dashboard across the various DevOps stages. So using Azure Log Analytics, alerting and monitoring, it can take all of this information in to a single central location, which is wonderful for our operations staff, our security specialists to look at, honestly for anyone to look at. So if I'm part of building an application and deploying that to a public cloud, I want to see it as well. I want to make sure that what I'm producing from the earlier stages is secure from the outset. And then from that, we can make data-driven improvements around cloud risk governance. Use the evidence collected by these things to guide and steer governance. I'm going to show you just a couple of those to get started. Okay. In terms of subscription security, what I can do is we can just go into PowerShell. I knew I was going to forget to have that open, and I've done that. Okay, let me cheat and go there. Oh, and I didn't have it open. So one of the windows I was going to definitely have open was, okay, it was a PowerShell window and I was going to run a script that comes from the Azure Security Kit. And I haven't got that open. Actually, I said this will be a casual session, so let's be casual because I put it into my little speaker notes. And that's the location of it just there. So let me borrow that.
Just while you spin that up, we've got a question from the crowd here. Should we be using DevOps pipelines for this or GitHub Actions?
All of the above.
Good answer.
A valid?
Very diplomatic.
Well, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that particular question. Honestly, right now, and I'm not avoiding the question, I'll come back and talk more about it. Right now, whatever tool you're using, even if you're not using either of those, these tools could be included. If you're going and doing something with Jenkins or Bamboo or something or other, and you're deploying to Azure, the Azure Security Kit can assist. Okay, so it wasn't just a diplomatic answer. It doesn't matter if you're deploying to Azure from what. If you're deploying from a command prompt, do it in your command prompt.
Fantastic. Thanks, Anthony.
All right. There's the command. Sorry for the mucking around there, but it's basically get AZSK subscription security status, and I pass across my subscription ID. I can put a lot of qualifiers on that, or I can just point it at the subscription and say, run amok. I'm going to show you the output of what that looks like. So if I zoom over here, there's a folder. And for each of the resource groups that I've got in the subscription, it's gone and had a look at those things. If I open, that one's a very boring one. If I go and open up one of those, okay, for each of the Azure resources there, you'll see the log files that are inside it, okay. It produces a CSV file, and I can open that CSV and have a look at it. And that's great for filtering and automation. We can go and scan through that, look for certain things. With an extra switch, I can also go and produce a report. a human readable report. Now I'm getting a bit worried because it's nearly 600K. So if I open up the results of running this on one of my live subscriptions, okay, so we see some details, table of contents, and now we start seeing the results. Now the column there that says medium, high, we're going to not pay attention to that. The fact that we see 68 pages, okay, do as I say, not as I do is the upshot of all of that. So I'm sure that there's a few of you, if you've got your own subscriptions, whether it's your personal subscription, whether it's the teams, the organizations, simply going and running that can be incredibly insightful and scary at the same time. Okay, so well worth a look. The next one there, develop securely, spot check security via scripts. I'll show you this in two different ways. Firstly, Security Intellisense. Okay, Security Intellisense is something, it's an extension, this is part of the Azure Security Kit, but it's an extension that we can add into Visual Studio. So if I just leap over to, I think I had it open somewhere. Yes, I do, right at the end. So if I go and open up Visual Studio, I go into my extensions, manage my extensions, and have a look at the installed ones. You'll see that I have Security Intellisense installed. We can go in there and check online, we can search for Security Intellisense and we can add it, just like that. And most of you, I suspect, might know what Intellisense is. So Intellisense helps us as coders with things like code complete. It makes us more productive writing code. Security Intellisense, if we look at that screen, the red wiggly line is some kind of error. It could be a typo, it could be a missing using statement, it could be many different things. But many of you probably haven't seen the green wiggly line there. The green wiggly line is Security Intellisense in action. So if we pick a simple one down the bottom here, where I've tried to set the AES key size to 128, as I hover over it, notice the guidance there. The encryption key size used for AES must be large enough, show potential fixes, and it's telling you that the key size here is way too small to be considered secure. If I go and have a look at MD5 crypto, it's basically saying the MD5 hash algorithm is weak and must not be used. So as I type that, I'm notified that this is insecure. I click show potential fixes and it recommends other crypto classes or libraries that I should use in my code. So in terms of the sooner you find a vulnerability or an issue, the cheaper and better it is. You don't get much earlier than the moment we finish typing it in to Visual Studio. Okay, so that's kind of, if your team uses Visual Studio, tell everyone to go click extensions, click manage extensions, search for Security Intellisense and get that installed. Okay, that to me, that's a bit of a no-brainer. Okay. We also have these security verification tests you can have a look at, and this is the last one of these I'll show you. So at any point in time, I can go and run scripts that will go and check against various rule sets. It could be, you know, that my application requires a website, and the website, using infrastructure as code, I've gone and set these values. They may not be very secure values. They could be, you know, it could just be a default setting that I haven't modified that doesn't meet security practices. So we can run these as part of a pipeline. Okay. And you know what? I'm just going to skip straight to the demo. So if I go and have a look at, oops, there's a question there.
Sorry, that was me accidentally unmuting myself.
Excellent, no worries.
Great question, yeah. Just conscious of time as well, Anthony, as well. So there's so we've got 15 minutes left as well. So just to call that out.
Perfect. So the usual story of me talking too much is what I just heard. So in that particular example, where we can bake security into the pipeline, And I've closed that window just because, again, difficult to find good help. All right, so if I go and choose the right project, which I should have had open, I'm going to go into my pipelines. So in my pipelines, that's a standard build pipeline. There's nothing special about it. What it does do is it picks up my ARM templates, determining how I want to, configure Azure to deploy the application. I'm going to go into releases, and this is where there's something a little bit more interesting. So when I click on releases, you'll see here that I have been able to previously successfully deploy to production, but my most recent release to development, the dev environment, failed. If I go and click on edit, let's have a look at the steps in my pipeline. And these are out of the Azure Security Kit, which is that free download. Okay, I'll have a look at my job. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to run the ARM template checker. So I pull down the source, including the ARM templates. I'm going to now go and check those ARM templates to make sure that I'm not doing anything silly with my infrastructure as code. I included this. This is a neat little add-in, and what it does is it reads the output of that and makes them appear as NUnit tests, which makes no sense on a release. It then publishes those results. Okay, if there's a problem, I can break straight away. And then down the bottom, when I am done, I run, so I check the template's secure, I do everything I need to do, I deploy the infrastructure, deploy the application, and then I run the security verification tests, all as part of the built-in release process. Now, I'll explain these two little sneaky steps. They're the odd ones out. Why did I do that? And I said that by tricking it into thinking they're NUnit tests and publishing them, if I go back to the execution of those pipelines, I'll find one of the ones that worked, for example. And when I visualize the results of that pipeline, come on, not what I wanted. Behave yourself. That one there. Okay, if this doesn't show what I want it to show, there we go. Hurry up. There we go. So see what it's done. So when I have released to the dev environment, 83% of the ARM template checker tests passed, 2 of them failed. Now, the reason it still succeeded in the deployment is I reviewed those 2 things and I said, no, this is fully acceptable, and I created an exclusions file there. Okay, so I thought that was interesting. Now I'm going to pivot completely. I probably should have had a transitionary slide there. So moving from security, the other thing I said that we should consider is it a good time to look at our tool chain? Software development has been changing for many years now. 99% of large enterprise applications leverage open source software. For a lot of those applications, the amount of open source code in new code bases could be up to 90%. Think about that. The development teams are actually only writing 10% of the code. So when you look at tools like Azure DevOps and Azure Repos, we're really focused on the 10, 20, 30% of code. The rest of the code is coming from the open source world. Okay, there's a link down the bottom there. Microsoft acquired GitHub about a little over 18 months ago now, and that was an amazing acquisition for the company. If you look at it, Azure DevOps has great experience working with enterprise customers. We empower thousands of enterprises. We've got over 15 years of developer innovation and experience in the enterprise. On the other side of that is GitHub, home of open source software around the world. More than, I think it's actually closer to 45 million users, which is extraordinary. And there are some great big numbers there. The home of open source with an organization with amazing experience succeeding in the enterprise. So the marriage of those two sets of skills and knowledge, I think, is incredibly exciting. Microsoft and GitHub are committed to the future of both products. Okay, no question about it. That said, Microsoft's stated direction is that we want to make GitHub so compelling to the world's developers that they want that to be their home. Okay, Azure DevOps not going away. Some of the biggest teams at Microsoft, say Office, only onboarded the pipelines towards the end of last year. Windows, the code base there is 2 orders of magnitude larger than any other code base. It can't move anytime soon. So we're very heavily committed to Azure DevOps, but a lot of focus, investment and innovation is moving to our strategic direction of GitHub. I'm part of developer services. As part of developer services within Microsoft, if you walk up the organization chart, you're going to come to a gentleman called Nat Friedman. That's the CEO of GitHub. So we've had that same organizational structure now for 18 months or more. So that clarity of vision across the investments of where these products are going is truly amazing. If you look at the foundations there, both Azure DevOps, Azure repos, GitHub, all based on Git. If you look at CI/CD, Azure Pipelines is an amazing CI/CD solution. GitHub Actions V2 started as a fork of Azure Pipelines, and they've built on that, and they've turned that into an amazingly powerful automation engine, and it's only going to accelerate and get better. When I say automation engine, it will tackle CI/CD and get better and better at that, but it goes well beyond that. So I can go and create things that have nothing to do with CI/CD. I can go and create workflows so that if someone likes a repo, if someone opens a pull request over here, I can go and trigger and drive things from that. So I think as far as GitHub Actions, when you think of it as a workflow engine encompassing CI/CD, that's going to be truly exciting, and it's very successful today. That said, if you're used to the classic designer, if you're doing a lot of CI/CD, in my very humble opinion, GitHub Actions aren't, there's not a feature parity there yet. There's a lot of other exciting areas where it's just, it addresses things that Pipelines doesn't even look at. But for people considering Actions, have a good look at it. Depending on the type of application you're building, it could be brilliant today, and it is for sure. But for things like traditional .NET applications, you're going to have a couple little bumps along the way, but that's improving every single day. So that's a truly exciting future to look forward to. And then, of course, a lot of similarity with our code packages. Wow. So in terms of my time, so basically we're increasing the options and opportunities we've got. So GitHub and Azure DevOps together are a compelling story, not just for open source, but for enterprises moving forward. Some of the points of integration that you can look at. If I jump back into here, I realize I've gone out of that application. I'm going to assume if you've done any development, you've come across GitHub. I'll have to assume that today. We haven't got time to go into it any more deeply. But what I've got here is I've got Coffee Roasters Online. That's sitting in Azure DevOps today. If I jump across to here, there's Coffee Roasters Online. The source is sitting in GitHub. Okay. Having that sit in GitHub offers a lot of compelling benefits to me. A, in terms of talent acquisition, people coming out of universities and things, they know GitHub. They're comfortable with GitHub. They understand the benefits of inner source, the pull request workflows, the fact we can have great, meaningful conversations that attract within the development process. That's fantastic. The branching models that we can adopt in here, some of the security things. So baked in some great security here. And right now it's telling me that there are secrets in my repository. Now, I didn't need to go and run a pipeline to do that. It can do it automatically with token scanning. So you can see token scanning on public repos today, and it's truly extraordinary to see that work. You can see things like Dependabot in action saying, here's a vulnerability and here's the pull request we created with the fix. So you can just look at that, and if you're happy with it, you can then merge that pull request into the code base. So right now, there are tools in the marketplace. I can go and say Azure Pipelines in GitHub, and I can go and add that integration quickly and easily. So I can keep my code in GitHub, where it's well nurtured and looked after, and it can go and drive over here in pipelines. If I go into my pipelines and have a look, this particular one here, that's actually pulling code directly from GitHub. And I have all of the richness of pipelines, particularly then when I push across to CD and the release side of it, I can keep my releases in pipelines for as long as I want to. That's my choice entirely. In the area of boards, I can also go into GitHub and I can type in Azure Boards. And I can click here and enable boards integration between them, so that as a developer in GitHub, I can go in there and say, hey, I want to do this pull request, and it fixes AB hash 47, Azure Boards, work item 47, and it links that Git commit directly to my work items over in Azure DevOps. I can use the GitHub Mobile application. I can go and review pull requests. And remember, we're making smaller changes more often. I'm not scrolling through reams of source code, but I can look at the applications. I can raise issues straight from a mobile device. I can go and implement this from Dan Helm. And I can say that I want to create an issue whenever there's an issue created in GitHub, so let's do this one quickly. Issues, create a new issue. And I might say bug report issue, just so it stands out for people. So I can create the issue. That's in GitHub. And through that really nice tight integration, if I switch back over to Azure DevOps and have a look at it, I can go into my work items, and I can refresh my work items.
Just while that's refreshing, we've got 2 more minutes.
There it is.
Which hold out until you're done here, because I've got a question that we want to ask you as well.
Okay, there's the issue there. It's carrying the assigned to, it'll carry the tasks across there. When the issue is resolved or closed in GitHub, it'll be updated over here in Azure DevOps. So it's really worth having a look at what the world looks like when you bring those two tools together today. Microsoft are not pushing anyone out of Azure DevOps at all, and it's here to stay. But from the area, from the side of GitHub, I think we're going to see some really compelling, exciting things there. And we're committed to saying that when a customer is ready, be that in 6, 12, 18 months, we'll make a migration path across incredibly easy. So any investments today in Azure DevOps will carry across nicely into GitHub in the future when an organization feels they want to move across and when they choose they're ready. All right, so I've only left 1 minute for a question. What's the question? You guys get to pick the most interesting one.
Sure, so there's a question here around any suggestions or best practice about using GitHub on-premise with Azure DevOps for the board and build release, which then gets released back to on-prem.
Okay, so if we're using, that's a really good question. And I've been living in the cloud for most of the last few months. So how Azure DevOps Server on-prem, how we can integrate that with GitHub Cloud. Was that the direction? Did I get it right?
Yep. GitHub on-prem. Yes, basically GitHub on-prem with Azure DevOps for your board, and then release back to your on-prem.
Okay, so certainly putting your self-hosted agents for Azure DevOps inside the organization is safe and easy to do. So being able to build it in the cloud, bring that down and deploy within the organization, that remains very, very easy. What I would need to have a quick look at is how we can best enable that link between GitHub to Azure DevOps and do that in a very secure way. I'd need to just check on the best guidance for that, because there's certainly some risk and exposure there. I'm not quite sure the best way to manage that off the top of my head. So that one I'm going to have to find out.
Sure. So Anonymous, if you can just shoot through your email address, we'll follow up with you on that one.
100% agreed. Thank you. So sorry, I'm a minute over there. So hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully that you're all happy, healthy, and well. If you can, maybe use this as an opportunity to look at how our teams build software, look at it as an opportunity to self-improve, review security, look at our tool chain, and thank you very much. Sorry I didn't leave much time for Q&A there at the end.
That's all right. Thanks everyone for joining. Sorry.
Thank you. And also, Philip, if we can share, what we'll do is we'll share our email addresses at the end, such that if you have any questions, feel free to send it to us. Fill our inbox totally with all your questions, and we will be happy to answer those.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for everyone for joining. Look forward to seeing you all next week as well. Appreciate it. Bye now.
Thanks. Bye.